Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 193 of Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. And I'm joined, as always, by the best co-host in the game. You've heard him on the Tough Cover radio show. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. _. Mark, how are you doing?
Breaking news from league sources. They have confirmed the addition of the 33rd NFL team, the Oklahoma City Lightning, and they'll be holding an impromptu expansion draft today.
Absolutely. I love that we're just running with the Lightning thing. I called dibs on, like I said last week, I called dibs on the Chargers logo and powder blue uniforms. But those of you guys that have followed along the last few weeks, we have been going through a process, a 3-week expansion draft process. And so in part one, we went through and established protected players from every NFC roster. In part two, we did the same thing for the AFC. If you've missed those, you can go check those out not on YouTube, but on podcasting platforms. It's time-stamped by team. So if you want to hear the discussion about a specific team who you would protect, you can jump to it that way. But we basically protected 11 total players from each team, 5 on offense, 5 on defense, and then a wild card that could be on either side of the ball. Today, we are going to move back through those rosters, and we are going to steal one person from each team to fill out a 32-man roster. And then I guess the other 21 guys would come from free agency or something. I don't know. That doesn't matter. But this is the way we're going to do it. We'll see how that roster, how we think it stacks up by the time we get done. And so last year, I think it was protecting 9 on each side or 9 total instead of 11 total. And the team was way too good. This year, I think our team's not going to be great, Mark, but we'll dive in and see how good of a roster we can construct. And so let me throw it up on the screen here. For those of you that are watching, we will track it on the screen. We'll also talk through it for those of you listening on other platforms. And if you want to play along with us at home, put together your expansion team using the protected players, one other person per team, and see where you end up. You can tweet that to us. I think it'd be interesting to see some of the different decisions that we make. And so, Mark, we talked about the quarterback position a lot. And I think we're both pretty well in agreement that Kirk Cousins is going to be our expansion team quarterback, correct?
Yeah, got to be Kirk Cousins. Got to continue the pattern of bringing Kirk Cousins in to be the franchise quarterback, only to potentially bring in a rookie later on.
Yeah. So Kirk Cousins is, I do think, we talked about that we were concerned about Kirk going into the 2024 season, weren't necessarily super high on the Falcons because of...
I was wrong about that, but I was concerned. But
well, yeah. You were high on the Falcons, but you were concerned, and I was really concerned about Kirk trying to come off the Achilles injury. And you saw it, as soon as week 1, I think the stat came out that he had moved, like his average movement from the top of his drop was like the lowest of any game in his career. And I think it became obvious as the season went along that he just wasn't fully back. So we're banking on Kirk being fully back. Also, there's just not a lot of QB options out there. So Kirk Cousins, maybe we don't call him the face of our franchise, but we can draft him as the quarterback anyways. So who's another guy that you want to... We'll just throw out names and we might diverge on some, but we'll figure it out. So who's another guy that you think's a lock for the team?
I think a name that's definitely going to be on the team is Jalen Ramsey from Miami. Yeah. Who's actually only 30 years old. I thought he was more like 33, 34. Maybe that was a dumb thought, but him only being 30 years old locks him in as, probably one of the stars of our team, I think. And one of the main reasons that we didn't protect him for Miami was kind of the trade rumors that were going on with him. And that it seems like they're going to trade him for probably a day 2 pick next year before the year if they're not able to figure something out. So we thought that probably wasn't worth keeping for Miami. But, yeah, he's going to be one of the best players on our team.
Yeah, Jalen Ramsey is probably the face of your franchise in this scenario, or at least one of them. So, I think Ramsey is a slam dunk pick there at cornerback. He's still a really good cornerback. He's not, top guy in the league like he used to be, but he's really good. And he's a guy that, especially for the expansion team, you would expect to come in and make a big impact. Let's go to the Eagles, because I think the Eagles have a pretty obvious one too. I think you're keeping Landon Dickerson here, right?
Yeah, so that's what I have. The one thing I will say is I would listen to a Jihad Campbell conversation. I mean, he's like one of, I think, 2 first rounders that we didn't protect across the entire NFL. So I do get the value of getting like a stud that young to a team that's, not going to have first round talent really on it, especially from this year. But Landon Dickerson's probably just too elite to make the argument. Like it's something to think about later on, potentially. Maybe if we feel really weak at linebacker or edge rusher, potentially even, and we feel like there's a ton of O-line options, maybe we revisit that. But I lean Landon Dickerson, and I think he's like probably going to be the best lineman on your team if you keep him.
Yeah, I could hear the argument for Campbell as well, especially if you're a expansion team that's just, you want youth, you want guys that could be future superstars. And I mean, potential superstar linebacker versus really good interior offensive lineman. So you could get into, you could get into some debate there. So I'll list Jihad Campbell down here at the bottom. And like you said, if we find ourselves too O-line heavy or too weak at linebacker, we can always circle back and change that.
I will say, I think Goddard's going to be better than whoever our tight end is, but I think there's enough tight ends available that you probably just can't do the Goddard thing. Same with Blankenship. Blankenship will probably be as good as at least one of our safeties.
Right.
But I think the value is probably higher with an elite lineman or a first round pick.
Yeah. Well, speaking of tight ends, I'll throw out a guy that I think is the tight end. I think it's probably Hunter Henry from New England, because mostly I don't love Hunter Henry. I think he's solid, but the only other real guy I have on the roster written down is Jabril Peppers, and I think there's plenty of safeties. So I kind of had Hunter Henry pegged as the tight end.
Yeah, the only other name I had for New England was Ramondre, who I'm not a big Ramondre guy, and there's also a lot of running backs we can kind of pick from. So I have Hunter Henry as well, but I had Hunter Henry as the second tight end.
Okay, I think I know where you're going to go with the first tight end, and I might not agree with it.
Yeah, I know. There's other names that you could bring up on Kansas City, but I do think Travis Kelce had 99 catches last year. Like I think, or 97 catches last year, 93 the year before. I just think he's going to be more valuable than Shamari Connor. And the one thing I'll say is there's a lot of young receivers that we didn't protect, kind of. So I don't think it makes sense to keep a receiver from the Chiefs. Because I think the value of Kelce over whoever, we can keep this open and not necessarily lock it in right now, but I think the value of Kelce over whatever tight end we're going to get, especially since Henry can block a little bit, is going to be bigger than the value of, like, I forget if it was Worthy or Rice that we didn't protect, but
it was Rice.
It was Rice. So I think that's like higher than the value of Rice over a couple of the even like second round rookie receivers that we didn't protect on teams this year. But we can leave that open. And also, not that this is necessarily what we're doing, but like if we're talking faces of the franchise and talking like building the team around someone, putting them on the media guide, like Travis Kelce's a good option for that.
Yeah, he would definitely be the face of the franchise in that situation. I feel like, so I think I had written down Shamari Connor from the Chiefs, but that's an interesting discussion that we'll definitely get to.
Yeah, let's leave that on the board still. Let's lock this down. Was there any other quarterbacks you were thinking of? Because I think there's a quarterback that slid very far in the draft this year who we did not protect for the Browns. And me and you both looked at Shedeur as at least a second round pick. I had him graded as a second round guy in the, I think, 28 or 29. And you, again, kind of like Jihad Campbell, not a lot of chance at like blue chip talent. Not that Shadeur's a blue chip talent necessarily. He obviously went in the 5th round, but we're higher on his talent than the NFL was, clearly. So I think you lock him in behind Kirk Cousins. And weirdly, it's actually like not a bad person for Shedeur to learn from, like in terms of the style that they play. It's not like I do think if Kirk was at all willing, I think Shedeur would learn from Kirk, but Shedeur is probably the backup quarterback, and Kirk is probably heartbroken.
Yeah, I think that, and neither one of us were the biggest Shedeur guys, but he shouldn't have fallen that far, in my opinion. And the only other, you could go with like a Daniel Jones, but you've already got like a steady quarterback. I think you would want to take the shot at upside. And so the only other guy that I could really think of that would fits that description is Anthony Richardson. And he just hasn't been very good through a couple years and been very injured. And so you could make the argument for Anthony Richardson as a high athleticism, high upside swing that's probably not going to work out, but that's why you have Kirk Cousins. But at the end of the day, I think there's a lot more guys on the Colts that I would like on the roster than there is for the Browns. And so with the Browns, you get into, you've got the safety duo. You got Grant Delpit, Ronnie Hickman, but I do think there's a lot of safeties. And so I do think Shedeur Sanders is probably the other quarterback for the Lightning.
I'm trying to even figure out who the other options would be. It's like Jacoby Brissett, who I think was on our roster last year.
Joe Milton.
Yeah, you could argue Joe Milton, Tanner McKee, but I think the Eagles are too good to make that argument.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm struggling to find any. Like, yeah, you mentioned Richardson and Daniel Jones. Those are
you could also make the argument for. Oh no, we protected Jalen Milroe for this.
Oh, if Milroe was out there, I think I'd probably take Milroe.
Yeah, I forgot we protected both Darnold and Milroe for the Seahawks.
Even though I had Shedeur higher, but I think the upside with Milroe might be higher. And if you were just taking like a swing that way, I probably would go Milroe. Yeah, there's nothing jumping out to me. I'm trying to even look at like fantasy rankings to see deep down on the list to see if there's anybody I'm not thinking of as like a steady backup. I don't think there's a lot of steady backups in the NFL anymore with the way that it works. So yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, if Tanner McKee was an option, I would take him over Shedeur for sure. But he's not, because you want Landon Dickerson or Jahad Campbell, and you're not in that quandary with the Browns. So we'll plug Shedeur in as the backup, and we can always change any of these as we go. So let's say Shedeur is there. What's another name that sticks out to you? I've got one. So I think you look at the Rams, and I just think Rob Havenstein, such a good tackle. He's on the older end, but whether it's Kirk as an older guy or Shedeur as a young guy that doesn't navigate pressure well at times, you do want a good offensive line. I think Rob Havenstein is a plug and play tackle for you.
That's who I had.
Okay. We've now reached the part of the show where I try to spell names that are hard to spell quickly.
You got it.
All right. So Rob Havenstein, he's right tackle, right?
Yeah.
I think he's right tackle. Yeah.
Not
that it matters a whole lot for this exercise, but
yeah.
I'll plug him in on the correct side there.
A name that I think I feel like should be pretty locked in here from Washington. I felt like linebacker was going to be a position we're going to be pretty weak at, and he's on the older side. Bobby Wagner graded out as the number 3 linebacker in all of the NFL last year. So I think getting a chance at like elite production, even though he's 35 years old, I think it's probably worth taking a swing to fill one of those linebacker spots.
Okay. I initially was leaning Marshawn Lattimore for Washington, but I do think he was, he got traded last year. He wasn't great for them. So maybe I'm just leaning a little more on name there than anything. So I'll go with you on that. Let's plug in. Where'd it go? We'll plug in Bobby Wagner.
I thought he was still really good for the most part last year.
Yeah, he is. He's still a really good player. No
doubt about that. My bad. You know where we're going to be roughest, and I don't even know if this is something I want to bring up right now to fix. We protected so many defensive linemen for teams. I feel like last year we had a really good defensive line. This year it's going to be rough. I feel like that's going to be the roughest spot on our whole roster.
Yeah, I do too. As I was doing the exercise, like there is a lot of like defensive linemen. It's like I feel okay about that guy, but there was nobody really that I was like, this is a guy that I have to have on the team.
Yeah, I'll bring one up as a defensive lineman, and it's a team that I really didn't find anybody from otherwise as well. And I think it's funny because I think you were way higher on me than him in the draft last year. But we talked about him when Seattle came up, and I don't think you're high on him at this point. But Byron Murphy, he was like the 10th pick last year. I think he graded out as like a mid defensive tackle this year. but first round talent still from last year. I think he's probably the D tackle to take a swing on.
Okay. Let's plug him in for now. I was looking to see who else I had written down from the Seahawks.
It's probably like Kenneth Walker's probably.
Yeah. I had Kenneth Walker.
I think there's enough running backs. And I actually kind of cheaped out on my one running back slot because I didn't have a lot of players from one team.
Yeah.
We can talk about that when we get into it, but I do think Byron Murphy's at least an upside swing from a first round pick last year that went pretty high.
Okay, yeah. We'll plug him in there and circle back down the road. What about this is another one that I had penciled in for the Jets. I went with Joe Tippmann to be our center.
I had Joe Tippmann.
Okay, yeah, I didn't have anybody defensively for them, and then it came down to like Joe Tippmann or Mason Taylor, and we already have Hunter Henry, so I think Joe Tippmann is a guy that you plug in on the offensive line.
Yeah, that's what I had. I like that.
Our defensive line might not be very good, but I think our offensive line will be pretty good.
Yeah, no, I actually felt pretty good about some of the offensive linemen I was leaving off of my list even.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think the next place we can go here.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I've got one that there's several players I'd like to keep. So you look at Detroit.
I was literally just going to say, let's talk about Detroit because there's a lot of names. That's crazy.
Yeah. So I've got 3 names, and I want all 3 of them on the team.
Yeah.
So you've got Taylor Decker, who we left unprotected, really good offensive lineman. You've got Jamison Williams, which we have no receivers yet, but we've said this, and I'll say it here. I think there's a lot of receivers, so maybe you knock Jamison Williams down.
We can already say one of them will be from the Bears. We can lock that in right now and say that. But
and then DJ Reed.
That's who I had.
And you could also make an argument for Jack Campbell, who was a pick we mocked a lot at the time, and it was still a bad pick, but he did have a better season last year. But I don't think with Taylor Decker and DJ Reed there, you can really consider Jack Campbell. So to me, it comes down with, do you want an offensive tackle or do you want a cornerback here? And
I think you got to go Reed.
I kind of think the same thing, but it pains me to leave Taylor Decker off of this because I think he's a fantastic tackle.
I sent a buddy of mine who's pretty good with like league-wide stuff and especially on defense, my roster, and he was like, no David Montgomery. And so he was like a name I wasn't even considering when I first ran through the names kind of comparing. And yeah, you didn't say Montgomery either. And I think running back, and I also think Montgomery's a little bit of the product of the situation too. But I think DJ Reed is like a top 20 to 30 corner probably. So I think that's a pretty awesome secondary already.
Yeah, we could make it an even more awesome secondary if we wanted to, because we could go to the Steelers and we could grab Darius Slay.
I'm in. I also had Pittsburgh. I actually had a couple names written down.
Yeah, there's a few.
Pat Freiermuth is a name. I've never been a big fan, but Caleb Johnson, a rookie running back, if you wanted to go that way. But the name that I really kind of struggled with against
Keanu Benton.
Yeah. Let's just talk about it right now. Baltimore, Pittsburgh ended up being the 2 that I thought I could flip either way. Now there is Isaiah Likely, who you could use from Baltimore. I didn't use him. There is Ronnie Stanley you can use from Baltimore. I didn't use him. It came down to, for Baltimore, I had Marlon Humphrey, and either I was going to let you pick one of Travis Jones or Nnamdi Madubuike. I don't know which one's better. They both grade out pretty similarly and really well every year. Or Keanu Benton or Darius Slay. I think there's a D tackle and a corner coming from those 2 teams, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So do you like the Travis Jones and Madubuike with Slay combo, or do you like the Keanu Benton with Marlon Humphrey combo? I kind of lean Slay and one of the Ravens D tackles.
Yeah, man. I think Slay and Humphrey are like roughly similar players at this juncture, but one of them's 34 and one of them's 28. And so maybe that tips it a little bit. And then and I kind of also feel like when you look at the defensive tackles like Travis Jones, Keanu Benton, I feel like are fairly similar, like quality of players too. But Benton's a couple years younger.
Yeah, if you want to go Benton Humphrey, I'm down for that too. I'm down for both of those. What I will say is, maybe this is the time to say this. The only guy I had from Dallas that I had any interest in keeping was Siobhan Revel. So I think that would slot into our fourth DB slot. Unless you had a different Dallas guy you were eyeing up.
I mean, we could keep Jake Ferguson. We could make him the tight end too, but and I did have some linebackers written down for them, Damone Clark or Jack Sanborn. You could keep as a linebacker
Sanborn's
potentially.
Sanborn's interesting. Okay, yeah. Then we don't have to lock that in yet. Sanborn's interesting.
Okay, so we're gonna go Marlon Humphrey.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Okay, I initially had Humphrey and Benton, and then I was like, "Ooh, I forgot Slay," and then switched it. But I'm fine with that. Okay, like Keanu Benton. 2 E's. Yeah, good stuff.
All right, so Keanu Benton at D tackle. I feel good about our D tackles, but our edge rushers is going to be a little rough.
Well, I mean, we can talk about it right now, actually, if you want. I went both rookie. I went rookie on both edges.
Yikes.
I went Landon Jackson from Buffalo. And then I also went JTT from Indy.
Okay, so Landon Jack. Let me see who I had from Buffalo and from Indy. Okay, if I can find them on my list here. Okay, Buffalo. Yeah, so I had guys for consideration: Landon Jackson, Taylor Rapp, Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, and we already have a tight end.
Coleman, I just don't know if he's any good yet.
Yeah, I don't know that Coleman's good. Again, we're going to plug a receiver in next. That's where we're going next. But Taylor Rapp, I'm good with Landon Jackson. Let's do Landon Jackson for sure. And then you said
he's
JT.
Gonna be a stud. I'm so sure of it. When Buffalo picked him too, that the moment Buffalo picked him, I'm like, oh, there's like a stud edge who's going to be a guy for them for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Now the Colts, I had a bunch of names jotted down. Josh Downs or AD Mitchell if you wanted to go receiver. Shavarius Ward, but we've already taken corners. Yeah, I mean, I think JTT is probably the guy, honestly, from Indy that you take, unless you want to take a receiver, and we think we're good at receiver right now. So
yeah, and I think if a edge name comes up that we like, we could always just shift JTT to the D line spot, like the fifth D line spot below. But yeah, that's where I ended up with that.
Okay. Well, let's get 2 receivers off the board here because I think we've got 2 spots that we're taking a receiver. So one is Tampa Bay, Emeka Egbuka, first round pick that we didn't protect. The only other guys I really had jotted down are Kalijah Cansey and Vita Vea. We've already filled out D tackle, and Levante David, and we've already kept one old linebacker. So Emeka Egbuka is such a good player. I think you jump at the chance to get him on the expansion team.
Yeah, put him in at the second or third slot because he's going to be our slot guy for sure.
Yeah. And then I think the other play you mentioned earlier, but the Bears, you're going to keep either DJ Moore or Luther Burden.
So as a non-DJ Moore guy, I'll say I think you probably have to keep his like wide receiver 1 production because I think the rest of the room is going to be really young.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think it makes sense, even though I in my heart of hearts want to take Luther Burden, but in this scenario, I think it has to be more.
You can just run like the entire, just have 5 slot receivers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did feel like a lot of the guys I was looking at were slot receivers for sure.
Okay, so we don't have a safety yet, and we don't have a running back yet. Not that we have to take them in that order. But we at least have guys at every other position. Is there a team that you want to look at next?
Safety, I thought had to come, or I felt like the Bengals player was going to be a safety, whether it's Geno Stone or Jordan Battle. We kind of talked about that when we did it. I was going to let you pick between Geno Stone has kind of a longer track record of being a pretty solid to good player. Not old. I think he's probably like 28, 29.
26, actually.
26. Oh, okay. And then Jordan Battle, really good as a rookie, really bad last year. And I think Geno Stone actually took like a pay cut to stay with Cincinnati. And people were like, I saw Bengals fans like freaking out, like, how did they make him do this? It was not his fault. Like, so there were Bengals fans kind of defending Geno Stone still, even after the bad year. I don't know which way you want to go there between Stone or Battle.
Yeah, it looks like they both had bad years last year, which is probably indicative of your defense. Let's go Jordan Battle. Younger had a really good rookie season. Let's buy the dip on Jordan Battle and say he's going to have a bounce back year.
I like it. I liked him as a prospect, as like a day 2 guy, I remember. So I'm in on it.
All right. And then I think safety wise, another guy I really like is Talanoa Hufanga for the Broncos. Yeah. I think you kind of plug and chug with him and Jordan Battle.
That's where I was as well.
Okay. So that fills out our safety room. Let's talk other NFC East teams. Let's talk Giants and Cowboys.
Okay.
So Giants, I feel like you could go with Tyler Nubin.
Yeah.
Or you could go with Cam Skattebo.
Yeah.
I feel like those are the only 2 guys that really make sense off the Giants. We don't need Darius Slayton. Drew Phillips, but we've already taken 3 CBs, so I kind of think it's Skattebo or Nubin here. But we already have both safeties too, so.
Yeah, I like the idea of going Skattebo. He's actually my highest ranked running back who we didn't protect from the draft. So I think that's true. I'd have to go back and make sure. I was looking at that as I was going through doing this, and I think he was my highest ranked guy. So I like taking a chance on a rookie because I think we're going to have a more established, probably older kind of guy next to him.
All right, that works for me. Let's tie in the Chiefs here with the Cowboys because. Well, let's make a decision on this other tight end because you've got Jake Ferguson as a possibility. You've got Siobhan Revel as a possibility, or you could go with like Jack Sanborn for the Cowboys. For the Chiefs, we already kind of nixed Rashee Rice. And so that leaves you with either Travis Kelce or Shamari Connor. So you're probably looking at, we can either go linebacker with the Cowboys, or between those 2, we can take tight end and our extra defensive back.
I think we definitely go Kelce, and then I don't have a preference between Sanborn and Revel. If we wanted to take, I'm not in love with either of my 2 linebackers that I have on my team otherwise. So I'll look up Sanborn to get a idea of the PFF grades the last couple of years here.
Okay, so Travis Kelce becomes our tight end 1, bumps Hunter Henry down to tight end 2. For the Cowboys, we can either take Siobhan Revel, or we can end up taking one of the linebackers. Maybe we just list both of those out and circle back to it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
All right, so Revel / Sanborn for the Cowboys.
I had Brian O'Neill down for Minnesota.
Yeah, that's another first round pick. That's the final first round pick we didn't protect, right?
No, he's been.
Oh no, that was Donovan Jackson. Sorry.
Yeah. Donovan or Brian O'Neill's been like a pretty solid tackle for them the last couple of years, and he's only 29 years old, so not too old. Probably kind of in his prime there. So,
all right, yeah,
once we assigned Kirk and couldn't take McGarry, and then once we assigned Reed and couldn't take Decker, I feel like that's the last kind of real option.
Yeah, Aaron Jones would be intriguing too, but O-line's more important.
Yeah.
And I think we pretty well talked about for the Packers, we were going to end up taking an offensive lineman.
That's what I have as I didn't even write which one. I was actually like looking through it and trying to figure it out, and I couldn't figure out which one to do. Let's leave that for if we can't find a guard, and then if we can't, we'll put him in the 6th spot.
Okay.
For Carolina, This was an interesting one because we could get better guys at this position, but I couldn't really find anyone on Carolina that interested me as much. I obviously liked this guy more than most last year. I don't think he had a very good season, but Xavier Legette was the name that I went with, and I had him kind of as our fourth receiver, but I just don't know what other direction to go in with Carolina.
Yeah, Chuba Hubbard's the other name that I had written down, and I know you're not a big Hubbard guy. I just think he's been solid for a team that doesn't have much else going on. But I'm cool with Xavier Legette there too.
Right, Hubbard / Legette. We'll leave that. We'll leave that for a little later. So we have those options. We have a Packers O lineman. We have the options from Dallas. Was there anyone from New Orleans that interested you? I went with Pete Werner.
I think that's who I put down as well. Yeah, Chris Olave would be really interesting if he could just like play 10 games in a row without getting hurt, because I think he's a really good receiver when healthy. He's just not ever healthy.
Yeah.
And yeah, Pete Werner's where I landed with him.
Yeah, that's what I had as well. So I actually feel like now we could probably lock in. I think it's actually Werner with an E.
You're right, it is
the W. But we can probably lock in Landon Dickerson now. Now that we know we feel pretty good about those two linebacker spots. Arizona, I had James Conner, when Kyler has played, has been really good over the last couple of years. He actually led the league in screen yards for running backs last year. He had the most receiving yards from running backs, two straight years over 1,000 yards. He's got 38 touchdowns over the last 4 years. I think he's the best running back available. He's obviously older, but you have Scadaboo right behind him.
Yeah. My heart wants to take Baron Browning, but he had a huge drop off last year and then he got traded. So you're probably right on that one. And that gives us our second running back, which lets us fit some other pieces in here. So I
guess that also slots Legette in as well.
Yeah. So James Conner at running back.
And he's also like a pass catcher. So that helps as well.
Yeah, and so that slots in Xavier Legette as a wide receiver.
There's an E on the end there.
There we go. Okay.
Let's skip San Fran for now. Let's do Houston.
Okay. I thought you said let's do San Fran. I was going to say, okay, you want their kicker or their punter?
Yeah, well, maybe we should then. Let's put Joey Sly in there for San Fran.
It's pretty bad. It's kind of crazy, like how far they've fallen. Yeah. It's kind of like the ultimate disrespect when you take a team's kicker or punter in this exercise, but there's really nobody else for San Fran that, like, I don't have any names written down.
Neither do I. It was the only name I had.
Okay, so over to Houston. I have Jaden Higgins. Tank Dell, but Tank Dell's always hurt. So
I also had Jaden Higgins.
All right, so that's going to fill us up at receiver.
And he's also like a real outside linebacker, a real outside receiver as well. So one less slot guy.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 6 teams left. We need 2 offensive linemen, a linebacker, a defensive lineman, a defensive back, and a punter.
Basically one each on defense.
Yeah. So what about, let's see, where's the Raiders?
The Raiders have 3 options I had written down, and I'm fine with any of them.
Dylan Parham, Malcolm Kuntz.
I had those 2, and I had Eric Stokes, but I think we could probably take Stokes off. Let's do Parham or Kuntz.
Let's do Parham. I really like Parham.
Got it.
Okay. Dylan Parham at guard. I mean, we're pretty much taking a Packers lineman too. So Sean Ryan or Aaron Banks.
Let's do Sean Ryan just because I liked him in the draft. And right? The one thing, so that changes who I had from the Chargers because I had Mekhi Becton. from the Chargers. Yeah. So who did you have from LA?
Let me go look.
I'm trying to see if there's any. I think it's the only name I had written down.
Cam Hart.
Ooh,
Tony Jefferson. But yeah, Becton is the guy I had slotted in as well. So maybe we should look at the Packers roster again.
Real quick, who's on? We're in a little bit of a corner here.
Here, hey, take a look at the Packers. Give me just like 30 seconds. This is great for live podcasting.
No, that's fine. That's totally fine.
I'll be right back. Talk through the Packers roster and give me just a second.
Yeah, I got you. The Packers, we were going to take an offensive lineman because it kind of seems like they have a good amount of options to take from it. They also have a good amount of receivers, but we've already slotted receiver up here. In terms of the defensive backs we could keep, they already protected Jaire Alexander, and they already protected Xavier McKinney. Evan Williams graded out pretty well at safety for them last year. Maybe you could argue slotting him in makes sense. Javon Bullard was a second-round pick for them last year. Didn't have a great year, but he was a second-round pick. Carrington Valentine, late pick for them a couple years ago, graded out pretty average in terms of corner. Couple D-line. I think we protected Devontae Wyatt, but if I'm mistaken, maybe you could throw him in. I think we're probably going to end up with a punter from Tennessee. I had Foyside Olakun for Jacksonville at linebacker. So yeah, it's going to be interesting because for Dallas we have one linebacker, one DB, one D-line spot. For Dallas we have a corner and a linebacker. For Green Bay we have a lineman. For the Chargers, we have a lineman and a corner. For Tennessee, we have a lineman and a punter. Jacksonville, all I have is a linebacker. So it kind of makes me think we have to go with Olakun from Jacksonville as the linebacker. I think that's where we're going to have to end up here. I have Olakun at linebacker. I have Mitch Wishnowsky at punter. I have, I think probably.
Okay, I'm back.
I'm struggling because it all ties together now. This is where it gets tough. I think we're gonna have to go with Olakun from Jacksonville.
Okay, yeah, he's a name that I don't mind him as a linebacker either, and I think that pretty well puts Ravel in as our fourth defensive back.
Yeah,
and I think that's more important than a third linebacker.
I agree. Let's go with Olakun and Ravel.
Okay. This one's a fun name.
It's Foyeside Oluokun. Yeah.
Is it SI or SA?
Am I wrong there? I thought I had it.
I'm going to hold on. Let me look. Oh. Yeah, it's SA.
I led you astray. But that slots in as our third linebacker. Siobhan Revel slots in as our corner.
Okay, so that means we need, out of the Chargers, Titans, Packers, we need an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, and a punter. And so
the problem is we have three linemen here.
Yeah.
Kevin Zeitler is the Titans guy, the only non-special teams Titan I had written down, but I don't think he's going to get the nod. I think it's going to be the punt. I think it's going to be Mitch Wishnowsky from Tennessee as the punter.
Spell that.
Mitch and then Wish now SKY.
Okay. Wishnowsky. Okay, so for the Chargers and the Packers, we need to find a defensive lineman.
Did we protect Devontae Wyatt?
Let me see. Devontae, I'm pretty sure we did. If not, that's the solution. Yeah, we did. We protected Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, Edgerrin Cooper, so we protected their entire defensive line, basically. The other option would be to keep take Matthew Golden from the Packers and throw back one of the wide receivers we already took to get a defensive lineman. And defensive lineman, but I do not want to throw Emeka Egbuka back. But they do have Kalijah Cansey and Vita Vea.
We protected Scorton and Princely for Carolina.
Did the Bears? What about Grady Jarrett? Nah, but we need DJ Moore, don't we?
Yeah, we need DJ Moore.
What about the Panthers? Yeah, we protected Princely and Scorton.
Wait, would we want to go Kuntz?
Yeah, that's what we do, right? Malcolm Kuntz for our D line instead of Dylan Parham, and then we can plug in Mekhi Becton and Sean Ryan.
Yeah, which means we ended up with pretty darn close to my exact thing. The only changes that I think I made were there was a change somewhere. I can't figure it out now.
So Malcolm Kuntz. Oops, I accidentally capitalized the A. We'll shift him over to D line, and then Sean Ryan
as the extra guy.
Yeah. O line, and then Mekhi Becton.
We reunite Mekhi Becton and Landon Dickerson on the inside there.
Yeah, there we go.
That's a better team. That's a pretty good team.
Yeah, that's not bad. So here, I'll run through it. So at quarterback, our quarterback room is Kirk Cousins and Shadur Sanders. I like that you've got the vet that's seen a lot and the rookie. Running back Cam Scatabo and James Conner. Wide receivers DJ Moore, Emeka Egbuka, Xavier Legette, and Jaden Higgins. And I do like that you have the vet number one type guy. I mean, he's not like a 1A type guy, but he's a viable number one. Jaden Higgins is also a potential boundary guy. Egbuka, I think, will be really good in the slot. So I like the weapons there. Travis Kelce and Hunter Henry. I mean, you're not going to have Kelce for long, but he's the face of the franchise, savvy against zone, that sort of thing. And there's some physical limitations, but brings some leadership, some veteran presence to the offense. And I think our O-line is really good. Brian O'Neill, Landon Dickerson, Joe Tippmann, Mekhi Becton, Rob Havenstein, Sean Ryan is the sixth guy. Defensively, I don't love Landon Jackson, JT Tuimoloau as our edge rushers. But if one of the two hits, you're in a solid place. I do really like Byron Murphy and Keanu Benton on the inside. Malcolm Kuntz is our rotational guy. Our linebackers are old but good. Bobby Wagner, Pete Werner, Oluokun. I never know how to say his first name. I think our corners are really good with Jalen Ramsey, DJ Reed, Marlon Humphrey, Siobhan Ravel. And then you've got at safety Jordan Battle and Talanoa Hufanga with Joey Sly and Mitch Wishnowski as our specialists. So honestly, I think the team is pretty solid. It's not like this team's going to win the Super Bowl like last year's team, but I think this is a team that I think you could reasonably expect this team to go like 500 in their inaugural season with decent coaching. And you've got if you could go 500 with this team, and I mean, you've got some old guys in Ramsey, Wagner, Werner, but it's still a pretty young roster overall. And so I think this team would be competitive in year one. And I think they'd have the potential to be really good a few years down the road if they can get quarterback right and get some development from some of these younger guys. So what are your overall thoughts on the roster, Mark?
Yeah, I think it obviously all comes down to like quarterback and D line here with what you're getting from Kirk and Shador. And then if you have enough pass rush with Landon and JTT and Kuntz. Kuntz missed last year. Maybe he bounces back and gets back to normal. Benton, pretty good pass rusher from the inside. But yeah, I mean, I think you feel great about linebacker, secondary, weapons and O-line. I think all of those areas you feel pretty good. Who's our head coach? Joe Brady, Todd Monken. I'm trying to think coordinators that I like. Brady and Monken are the first two that come to mind.
Yeah, Monken probably. Let's see.
I like that. Yeah, Monken's a good one. I have those lists that I usually make on somewhere here with all the Liam Cohen got hired.
Brian Flores, if you want to go full chaos.
Yeah, that's
chaos
true.
mode on defense.
And also like make your quarterback hate himself mode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Joe Brady or Monken.
Yeah. Todd Monken, head coach of the Oklahoma City Lightning.
I like it.
So, all right. Well, there you guys go. Always a fun exercise for us to do. I hope you guys enjoy playing along with it as well. Let us know your opinion on some of the ones we debated here, or if you would go in an entirely different direction with the team. I would certainly be interested to hear what your guys' thoughts are. But I always enjoy this show a lot. It's just a fun way to go talk about rosters and the strengths of teams. And it really is eye-opening for some teams like Dallas and San Fran, for example, that it's like, man, there's not really people that I want to take off of these rosters. And then on some others, it's funny. There's some teams that aren't that good that it's like, man, there's guys that I had to leave exposed that I really like. And it's just an interesting way to think about the teams for sure.
I definitely always walk out of this exercise, and I actually talked about this on radio on Saturday. I talked about how we were doing this and how I had a couple teams that I walked out higher and lower on. You mentioned two of them there with Dallas and San Fran that you definitely walk out lower on. Another one that I walked out lower on, and maybe this is like dumb because they were the number one pick last year, but I walked out being like, man, if Cam Ward succeeds this year, then that guy's special because I don't think Tennessee's got a lot going on there. I didn't really think Brian Callahan in year one gave me a lot to be like, oh, I trust him to get it right with Cam Ward. I think there's a chance that looks like a train wreck this year. And I'm not a Cam Ward guy, but I don't even know if it'll be his fault if that's the case. And then a couple teams that I walked out feeling positive about, I think were the Jets. We going through that, especially on offense. You have Fields and Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson as exciting options to on the ground and in the air. And then you have legitimately 3 to 4 really good offensive linemen and hopefully Membu. And then you have Vera Tucker, you have Tippmann, you have the tackle I'm forgetting from last year, Fashanu. The Raiders, I thought I walked out feeling like, man, that offense is a 180 from where it was last year. I felt like I walked out thinking that Chicago has a lot more talent on the roster than I thought kind of going into the situation. But yeah, that's kind of what – same with Tampa. Tampa has a lot of talent on the roster. That was not – obviously they've been consistent, but a ton of talent on Tampa's roster.
Yeah, Tampa stuck out to me as well. Chicago, I feel like last year I was pretty high on them because I thought they had a lot of talent, and obviously their coaching was a disaster. So I'm really interested to see, like, it's kind of one of those things that, like, I've said I've been high on you talent-wise for 2 years now. Go prove it or I'm out. And so I need to see it from Chicago. But, yeah, certainly some interesting takeaways here. Let us know what your top takeaways were. Mark, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, nothing much. Long live the tush push. We kept it. Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown forever.
Long live the tush push. We did have a comment here a little earlier from Pumper asking how we feel about Roger Goodell's Eagles witch hunt.
I have a thought. The no back-to-back home games is the most invented slight I've ever seen Eagles fans make. We have 8 home games compared to 9 road games. It's how it works. Like, it's just it alternates year to year, which, by the way, it didn't end up mattering. That's why I was so upset last year when we played one of our home games in Brazil because the rest of the NFC was getting 9 games. Guess what? We won the Super Bowl with 1 less game than the rest of the NFC at home, but who cares?
Yeah. The thing on the back-to-back home games is if the Eagles had like a 3-game homestand, but then there was like 4 straight road games in November, everybody would be upset about that.
Yeah.
I think no back-to-back home games is fine. The tush push ban, I'm on record about how ridiculous that is. And also, I legitimately believe it will make almost no difference because the trick to the Eagles QB sneak success is having a center who is super athletic and can submarine so quickly after the snap. They had that with Kelsey. They have it now with Cam Jurgens, and then having a massive mountain of a man at left guard and a quarterback that can squat 600 pounds and can just surge forward right behind them. So, like, honestly, if the push part gets banned, I would expect the Eagles to like be marginally worse at it, but I don't think it would make much of a difference. So there was a part of me that was like, just ban it so I can talk about how you're soft all year and then take victory laps when they still push 4 times, or when they still QB sneak 4 times a game and it works 3 out of 4. So,
I mean, what Jeffrey Lurie said is right. Like, creating a play that is so good that it gets banned is like a wet dream for a teenage boy. I thought that was hilarious that Jeffrey Lurie said that in an owners meeting, but it's true. I mean, I almost wanted it to get banned too, so I could rub it in the face of every NFL team when we run sneaks. And I was also starting to theorize, like, would we actually even be better at it? Because, like, if you were running a sneak, the team would have to at least devote a resource to Saquon, like to stopping the run from, a toss or like a handoff, instead of just knowing it's a tush push every time. But I think it would be relatively the exact same success rate. We were really good at QB sneaks before the tush push. I saw a thread about that, and our success rate, I think it was 2021 before we did the tush push, about how good we were at sneaking all the way back then. So yeah, it's insane. And I do hope everybody knows we are destined for Packers Eagles NFC Championship. Like, we are destined for the Packers to be the team we're competing with for the 1 seed and be the team that we, see in the playoffs again. I think we're going to get a lot of Packers Eagles over the next couple of years. I think that's going to turn into our like non-division rivalry.
Yeah. Which, by the way, there's also like 21 other teams that are equally as soft as the Packers, but the Packers are the face of this thing now. And then the trying to ban the void years. I'm not going to do the salary cap deep dive thing here, but
it probably makes sense to do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's not functioning as intended right now, but also like it's still not free money. The money still comes due, so you can kick the can down the road, but it's not like if you ban void years, all teams are going to do is massively backload contracts that don't automatically void, but backload contracts with non-guaranteed money and then cut players, and it'll just be worse for the players. So unless you adopt a structure that requires like equal cap hits every year, teams are going to do this. Like, the benefit right now is the players know the contract is fake, and it forces the team to trigger and get rid of them by a certain time or extend them. And it really gives players more leverage. So I don't think it's going anywhere. And even if it were going to go somewhere, it would be a massive process to get it through the next collective bargaining agreement. This isn't something you could just like change in an off season because there's already contracts set up this way. So it would be a massive thing to do. And I do think it would end up having a lot of unintended consequences in terms of just non-guaranteed contracts, and you cut guys anyways. So you'd have to revamp a lot. I really don't think it's that big of a deal because it's not free money. It is borrowing from the future for now, but that's a whole separate thing. And again, any team can do this if they're willing to fork over money. And I will hear no arguments about poor NFL owners that can't do that because they own an NFL team. So figure it out.
Of course. No, that's a good breakdown.
So, all right. That is going to do it here for this episode. We will be off next week. I'm going to be traveling and unable to record, but we'll be back the following week to do something. We'll figure it out. Maybe a QB ranking, maybe a head coach ranking. I don't know what we'll do, but we'll have some sort of show for you guys in 2 weeks. So I hope you enjoy the off week. We'll catch up with you guys in 2 weeks. If you enjoy this show, again, 5-star ratings and reviews really help wherever you get your podcasts. You can get the video version on YouTube at Eagles or at Pinpole Eagles. I can't remember what it is. Just search it. You'll find it. It's been a while since I've shouted it out, but be sure you're following us on Twitter. I am at Shane Half NFL. He is at Mark Henry Jr. And we We'll catch you guys in 2 weeks' time. Go Birds.